Pokemon. It's a game where you make these adorable creatures battle each other, but what if you didn't want them to battle, didn't want them to Pokemon, and didn't want them to run? You just wanted to bag them. So I set out using exclusively my bag to beat the Pokemon League, and here's how it went. I start the game and choose to express my uniqueness by selecting the default appearance and not changing anything. After some painfully long cutscenes, I head to pick my starter. All of the starters are pretty mediocre for this run, but I picked Fuecoco as it has the highest bulk. I attempt to escape the starting area to avoid the fight against Nemona, but then realise there's an obtainable antidote that would make the first battle possible. Now I challenge Nemona to a battle, and exclusively use antidotes, as using antidotes that have no effect does not use it up. With this strategy I could stall turns until Sprigatito causes me to faint. A thing of note here is the AI really doesn't want to kill you. Sprigatito uses like 10 tail whips in a row before killing me with Scratch. So now I head to the lighthouse and fight the required Lechonk. Wild Pokemon in this run are luckily easy to deal with, as you can just catch them. Catching Pokemon would also be the primary method for me gaining EXP. So I catch a lot of Pokemon. During the Miraidon cave part, there is a fight against Haldoom, and the game forces you to use the battle command to do nothing. I don't know if this should count, but let me know in the comments what you think, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button and like the video. We arrive at the lighthouse and start the fight against Arven. This fight is the same as Nemona, but much worse. I spam antidotes until I faint. However, Arven uses Tail Whip until he literally runs out of PP. After losing to Arven, the game insults me. From here, I try and find some Paldean Woopers, as they can possess the Poison Point ability that would allow me to poison opponents on contact. I use Wooper to beat Nemona, Poison on the Sprigatito, and PP Stool to pull me, as its only attack is Thundershock. Next I head to fight Team Star. Unfortunately I lose, as Wooper could not poison the Poison type Shroodle. Now it's time for the first exploit. Usually you cannot escape the starting area until beating Team Star and going to school, but if you make your way to this cliff, you can lock on and throw your Pokemon to the other side and teleport. With this exploit, you are now able to access the rest of Paldea. The only problem is the painfully slow movement speed. Well, it's a good thing there's an exploit for increasing speed. If you add a second controller to your game and hold forward on both controllers, you can move at very high speeds. I use this to make my way to the desert while catching Pokemon on my way. In the desert you can catch Silicobra. Silicobra has a 50% chance to have the Sand Spit ability. This ability would allow me to continuously set up a sandstorm to chip the HP of my opponents while I'm spamming items. Next I head through this cave and catch a Glimmet for its ability. I now go to pick up a Rocky Helmet, an item that would allow me to deal a decent amount of damage to opponents on contact. With all my new tools, I head back to Mesagosa to fight Team Star. With Chip from both Rocky Helmet and Sandstorm, I easily beat Shroodle by spamming antidotes. As for the second grunt, their Yungoos makes contact with Tackle and faints to sand and Rocky Helmet damage. We now finish the tutorial of the game and can now go on to do the gyms. I decide to start with a bug gym as it's likely to be easy. I skip all trainers in the gym trial and now fight Katie. Katie leads with Nimble that has two moves, one contact and one non-contact. The AI unfortunately decides to use Struggle Bug until they have no PP and then use Double Kick, and I finish them off with Rocky Helmet damage. Both Tarantula and Teddiursa only have contact moves, so I can beat them in a low amount of turns with Rocky Helmet and collect my first badge. With that over, I decide that this is a good time to farm star pieces, so I head to the desert and save before grabbing the items. When I find a star piece, I set up a picnic so the basket is on top of the star piece. This causes a glitch, and now eggs produced will now be star pieces. After waiting a while, I collect and sell my star pieces and stock up on items. Since I'm in the desert, I decide that catching a high level Sandaconda will be useful for reducing grinding later on. The next stop was the grass gym, and on my way I catch a Gulpin and a Corvisquire. For the second gym, I leave with Gulpin, as its Liquid Ooze ability would allow me to deal damage to Petal, as its only attack is Mega Drain. This strategy ultimately fails, and I just PP Stool until it struggles to death. Against Smoliv, I PP Stool Razor Leaf until it uses Tackle and KO with Rocky Helmet damage. Brassius's final Pokemon, Sudowoodo, has a contact move with Trailblaze. I use this and contact damage from Rocky Helmet to score a KO. With the second badge down, I head to the Electric Gym and fight Nemona. I perfectly craft a team of a single level 9 Lechonk to minimise the amount of time I spend on this fight, as you don't need to win against Nemona to progress. The trainers in Iono's gym are easily beat from damage from Sand and Rocky Helmet. Now it's time for Iono. She leads with Rockwell, a Pokemon with exclusively contact moves. This makes it easy to finish off with Rocky Helmet. Her Belly Bolt uses Water Gun, and I heal with potions and eventually finish it off with Sandstorm damage. Luxio is another Pokemon with contact moves, and I beat her with Sand and Rocky Helmet damage. Iono's Miss Magius's only way to attack Sandaconda is Hex, which only has 10 PP, so Sand could not KO, and I would have to wait until it struggles itself to death. After that, I head to the normal gym. I googled the answers to the normal gym trial, as I can't be bothered to do it legitimately. Against Larry, I use Glimmet to set up Toxic Spikes, but forget that Staraptor will not be poisoned from them. We finish off Kamala with Rocky Helmet, do Dunsparce with Toxic, and eventually finish Staraptor off with Rocky Helmet damage. I now buy out Paldea's entire stock of Lemonade, as I think it's the most cost efficient healing item. My 4th badge allows me to buy a 2nd Rocky Helmet to speed up fights. The water gym is the only easy gym left, so I head there. I, yet again, finish the gym trainer with Rocky Helmet and Sand damage. Kofu is fairly easy, as he has lots of contact moves. Lamora sets up Toxic Spikes and feints, and then I use Slowpoke with Rocky Helmet to finish off the rest of Kofu's team with Rocky Helmet damage and poison. With Kofu defeated, I set my sights on fighting Grusha, the Ice Gym Leader. But first, there is a Nemona fight. Lamora sets up Toxic Spikes, and I use Rocky Helmet to KO Lycanroc. The rest of Nemona's team feints to poison. Against Grusha, I lead with Glamora. I keep switching around until I realise that Glamora will have to PP stall Frostmoth. Eventually, Frostmoth uses Struggle, both causing it to faint and for me to set up Toxic Spikes. For both Beartic and Titan, I use Slowpoke and healing items to stay alive and cause them to faint with both Poison and Rocky Helmet. Grusha's final Pokemon, Altaria, is beat by using Revives on Sandaconda until it faints to the Sandstorm. And the 6th badge is mine. My 6th badge allows me to buy Quick Balls. This will allow me to catch a large amount of chances quickly and gain a lot of EXP. I make a mistake and forget to remove all of my Pokemon before fighting Nemona and spend about 10 minutes waiting for all my Pokemon to faint. During the Nemona fight, I realised that if the weather is snowing, Sandaconda's ability doesn't work, which later on is a pain during the Ghost Gym. While the Ghost Trial isn't particularly hard, it takes a long time for them to activate Sandspit on Sandaconda, so the fight lasts a long time. The 2nd gym trainer is equally long and frustrating, but the 3rd gym trainer is much shorter as they use self-destruct and contact moves. Then I fight Rhyme. Unfortunately, it was snowing for this fight and Sandspit wouldn't work. Damage from Rocky Helmet eventually causes Mimikyu to faint, and Toxic Spikes from Glamora's ability causes Houndstone to faint. During this, I use Corviknight, as its ability Pressure would double PP used, and that would make PP stalling much easier. And I stall Bayonet's Icy Wind, as it does not make contact. Rhyme's Toxtricity is fairly tough, as it deals a high amount of damage. Toxtricity finishes off its own teammate, and eventually I PP stall it until it faints to struggle. Now I arrive at the final and hardest gym yet. After completing the weirdest gym trial yet, we fight the gym trainers. Almost all of the psychic gym trainers require me to PP stall them, as they don't have any physical moves that make contact, and they have low PP damaging moves, making Sandspit not work. This is where Corviknight and its pressure ability come in handy, as it would be effective for shortening PP stall time by half. I now beat Pokemon after Pokemon by PP stalling. A trainer sends out Medicham. With its physical attacks, I can activate Toxic Debris and finish it off with Poison Point and Rocky Helmet. Didi eventually faints to poison damage. Finally, it's time for the final gym leader. Tulip sends out Varigura. I use its physical attacks to set up Toxic Spikes. I now easily use Lemonade and stall out until Tulip's team faint to poison and sand damage. With the final gym leader defeated, I can now take on the Pokemon League. But first, I grind by catching a bunch of Chansey's before selling all of my TMs to buy healing items. With my now high level Pokemon, it's finally time to finish the game. Surprisingly, Rika, the first Elite Four member, is the hardest, as 4 out of 5 of Rika's team had to be PP stalled as the only effective strategy, due to all of her Pokemon being immune to Sandstorm damage and only one of her Pokemon making contact. After a painfully long fight, it's time to fight Poppy. Like Rika, all of Poppy's Pokemon are immune to Sandstorm, but only one of her Pokemon doesn't make contact, so most of Poppy's Pokemon could be dealt with Rocky Helmet damage. Her Magnezone, however, needed to be PP stalled. Next it's time to fight Larry. I lead with Sandaconda and hope to KO with Sand damage, but Tropius does too much damage, so I just PP stall it. I beat Oricorio and Altaria with Sandstorm damage and finish off his remaining Pokemon with both Sand and Rocky Helmet damage. Hassel leads with Noiva. It has Super Fan as a contact move, and I finish it off with both Rocky Helmet and Sandstorm. Next he sends out Dragalge, which I beat with Sandstorm damage. Flapple is much harder than I expect with its Leech Seed, but I eventually poison it with Clodsai's Poison Point and finish off with Corviknight. Both Haxorus and Baxcalibur both faint to Rocky Helmet and poison damage from Toxic Debris. Finally, with all Elite Four members defeated, it's time to fight Geeta, the champion. Geeta leads with Esbufra, and I lead with Sandaconda. I now attempt to defeat Espathra with sand damage, but faint as the special defense drops from Lumina Crash are too much. I now send out Corviknight, and eventually Espathra uses Quick Attack and faints to Rocky Helmet damage. When Kingambit comes out, I let Corviknight faint and send in Glamora to activate Toxic Debris. Glamora faints and I send out Corviknight and use Rocky Helmet to finish off Kingambit. Veluza faints to poison the Rocky Helmet and Avalog and Go-Go does the same. Geeta now sends out her final Pokemon, Glamora, and the only way to beat it is to stall out all of its PP. After defeating Geeta, there was one final fight left. Nemona sends out Lycanroc and I send out Glamora. Lycanroc uses Drill Run, allowing me to activate Toxic Debris and faint. I now send out Corviknight and PP Stall Stone Edge, and when Lycanroc uses Excel Rock, it eventually faints to Rocky Helmet damage. Polmark uses Double Shock to take out Corviknight, but with the damage from Sand, Rocky Helmet, and Poison, it dies. With all major threats taken care of, the rest of Nemona's team all faint to a combination of Rocky Helmet and Poison. So yes, if you exclude Howdoom at the start of the game, you can beat Pokemon Violet with only items. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe.